Heading into week 18, there are 11 teams that have a chance to make the playoffs, but also have a chance to miss the playoffs. These scenarios can sometimes get confusing, so this is my attempt to hopefully help, make it less confusing, give you a guide to the playoff scenarios. Let's just get into it. Let's start off with the Colts-Texans, because they have a pretty easy situation. Very simple. They play each other the final game of the season. The winner is guaranteed in. The loser is guaranteed out. For simplicity's sake, I'll just put the Texans in the in section. It could be the Colts. It could go, just doing that to have one team one place and one team another place. The next team to talk about in the AFC is the Buffalo Bills, because they also have a pretty easy situation. If they win, they're in. They would be in the in category. They would actually jump all the way up to the 2 seed. The Miami Dolphins, the Bills would take their place as division leaders. The Dolphins are already clinched in, though. So, no new playoff spot is opening up here. However, if they lose, it comes down to the Bills and the Steelers. The Bills can still make it in with a loss, but they would need some help from Pittsburgh in this scenario. The Bills play Sunday night, so we would actually already know if the Bills need a win or if they don't need a win. Either way, they're going to care. It's a division victory, pretty big seeding jump, so they're going to care either way, which is why that's a Sunday night game. But if the Steelers win, then the Steelers would get in. If the Bills also lose, it would look like this: Steelers in, Bills out in that scenario. But there is one exception. That's the Jacksonville Jaguars in this scenario. So for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they actually have a pretty simple situation. They win the final game of the season, they are in. They don't even have to worry about it, and they win their division, and they play the Titans, who just aren't playing great football right now. So the expectation is that they win, they're in, and then it comes down to, winner of Texans Colts, and then Bills or Steelers for the other spot. But if they lose, now all of a sudden Texans Colts is for the division as opposed to just being for a playoff berth. The loser is still out, but then a second wild card spot is going to open up, and actually the Bills would be guaranteed in that scenario. So if the Bills get a Jaguars loss, they are in. So this is what the format would look like if the Steelers win, the Bills win or lose, and the Jaguars lose. The Jaguars are out. If the Jaguars lose, it then comes down to the Steelers or Jaguars for that final spot. So if the Steelers also lose, this is what it would look like, where Jacksonville could get in with a loss, but they would need a Steelers loss as well. So just to recap, the Texans and Colts play each other. Winner is in, loser is out. The Jaguars, if they win, they are in, or if they get a Steelers loss, they are in. The Bills also, if they win, they are in, or if they get a Jacksonville or Steelers loss, they are in. And finally, for Pittsburgh, if they win, they need help. They have to win. They cannot get in with a loss. They are the only team in the AFC on this board who cannot get in with a loss. They need to win, and they need either a Jacksonville or a Buffalo loss to get in. They get either of those things, and they are in. Moving on to the NFC, we got to talk about the NFC South. We're going to start off there. Again, both Southern divisions are still up for grabs. And just like how Jacksonville has a good opportunity to win, Tampa Bay has potentially even an easier matchup. They play Carolina, who definitely hasn't been playing good football this season. Although, again, crazier things have happened, right? No guarantee that they win, but that is the assumption. And for Tampa Bay, their spot is actually very simple. They win, they're in. They lose, they're out. And again, I'm not counting in ties because that just gets too muddy. I feel like we're only talking about wins or losses. If they win, they're in. If they lose, they're out. It's that simple. So, if they win, we don't have to even worry about these, Saints or Falcons winning the division. The Falcons would be clinched out of the playoffs. But as it stands right now, let's just play it out. If they lose, then it would come down to Atlanta and New Orleans, who play each other the final game of the season. One of them would win, and either the Saints would beat the Buccaneers and have just a straight up better record, or if the Falcons won, all three NFC South teams would be 8-9, but in the three-way tiebreaker scenario, the Falcons would actually have the tiebreaker now. They would win the tiebreaker if Tampa Bay lost to a division rival and the Falcons beat a division opponent. That would give them the tiebreaker over everyone else. The Falcons would be in. As for the last wildcard spot, only one wildcard spot up for grabs in the NFC, so 4 teams trying to get that wild card spot. Although again, the Saints have a chance to win the division as well, but let's assume that Tampa Bay wins right now. These 4 teams would need either need a win or need some help. And the way I have it set up is that the closest you are to the top of the screen, the better your chances are, the less help you need. So for the Packers, they don't need help. They just need a win and they're in. For Seattle, they need a win and a Packers loss. For the Saints, they need a win, a Seahawks and a Packers loss. And the Vikings, they need a win, a Saints, a Seahawks, and a Packers loss. A couple other 9 and 7 teams still in the NFC, the Bears and the Falcons, but they cannot get into the wild card. Only the Vikings, because they would have the tiebreaker over everybody else. So this feels like the most likely outcome in the NFC. The Packers play the Bears, which is not a guaranteed win, but again, not needing help is a real benefit this far into the season. And the 2 teams that don't need help, feel like they're in a pretty good spot here. Feels like those 2 get in. The Saints, Seahawks, Falcons, and Vikings are probably the teams that don't. But as a whole, again, any one of these teams can make the playoffs right now, and that's all you want to be heading into this, last week of the season. I mean, you want to be in, but if you can't be in, at least give yourself a chance to be in. This is what I have in the NFC. I decided to pick every single game in the final week of the season and just see how things were to play out. The 49ers are clinched into the 1 seed. I do have the Cowboys winning the division. And I have the Lions staying behind, getting the 3 seed right here. As I mentioned, I think Tampa Bay does beat Carolina. I think they get into the 4 seed, which would set up Tampa Bay versus Philadelphia matchup, which is interesting. They played each other 2 years ago when Jalen Hurts kind of had his first good season where he got to the playoffs, but Tampa Bay was trying to win a Super Bowl that year. Both teams fell short. Eventually, the Packers and Lions would play each other in the playoffs. That would be awesome. And again, a Packers win and a Rams loss, and that happens. Rams play the 49ers. Neither team is going to have a ton to play for because both have playoff spots locked up. The Rams could be the 6 seed or the 7 seed, but lowest they can get is the 7 seed. So that's why we didn't talk about them on the last section, because they're clinched in. They would play the Cowboys, which could also be a pretty interesting game. Meanwhile, in the AFC, again, Baltimore has the 1 seed clinched. I do have the Bills losing to the Dolphins, but again, that could go either way, and if that flips, it would cause a pretty significant jump, as the Bills would go all the way to the 2 seed. They have a legitimate possibility to miss the playoffs and get the 2 seed. Both feel relatively likely. It's their season is that much in the balance right here. If that happened, then Miami would get the 6 seed, Houston would fall to the 7 seed, and Pittsburgh would be out. But yeah, Chiefs feel pretty locked into the 3 seed, and Jaguars, as long as they win next week, are going to be the 4 seed. Browns are the 5 seed. That's I believe that's just locked up at this point. I do have the Texans winning against the Colts, but again, could go either way. If the Colts do flip things, then they would just take the Texans spot. They would be the 6 seed in that situation. And yeah, I have the Steelers finding a way to get into the playoffs at this point, so here's why I think that they end up getting in. They play Baltimore on Saturday afternoon. It's the Saturday afternoon game. If they can beat, and that, all season kind of felt like, well, that's going to be tough. Now, all of a sudden, Baltimore has the 1 seed locked up. In the past, they had rested their starters. Now, it didn't go well once they made the playoffs, so maybe they don't do that. But I have to imagine they're not going to have Lamar out there for every single snap, especially when running is such a big part of his game. At the very least, they're not going to run design runs, right? They're going to just have him sit back. They're going to take away part of his game. He's not going to want to take hits. All of that stuff, to me, means I think that they win in that scenario. And like I said, I have Buffalo losing the final game of the season. That being said, would I actually predict Pittsburgh or Buffalo? I might actually still lean Buffalo, and here's why. Because I think the most likely outcome to happen in the Bills-Dolphins game is a Dolphins victory, and I think that the most likely outcome in the Steelers and Ravens game is a Steelers victory, but you need 2 things to happen there, whereas the Bills just need 1 thing to happen. They just need one of those to flip and they're in. Because of that, I think the Bills might actually have a higher likelihood of actually getting in a weird sort of way. So either way, it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of games that matter this final week of the season. I was looking at it, and it looks like there's only 4 games next week that don't have some sort of major playoff implications, at least for a division or for a playoff spot. There's two more that don't really have anything for a playoff spot, but could determine the NFC East champion there. But so much craziness going on. Should be a wild final week. Hopefully this helped you understand a little bit of what's going on. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.